Hey guys, I am back again with another video, another critique video, if you will. I've done five, six, seven. I think I've done seven critique videos now. And critique videos have a place on YouTube in this weird algorithm. There's other guys out there that do fence work and concrete work and stuff like that that will kind of have their own channel focused on critique video. And that's never been my thing, but it happened back about a month and a half, 2 months ago when I ran across this other guy. And you can go to my channel and find those videos. But basically, what had happened is he was doing a really, really lousy job on a flip house. So I called him out on it insofar as his methods and all that stuff because he wasn't skilled at all. That led to my next video, which was, I think, about a week and a half ago, something like that, which now YouTube knows that I want to see screw up videos and they just feed me the videos that, yeah. So I did a video on that because that guy didn't really have a clue on what he was doing either. Arguably, neither one of those guys are tile guys. And so the critique was relatively easy, but they brought their information across as if it were fact, if it was like real, and it's not. And that's why I felt the need to kind of push back on it because both of those guys had a huge either following, which the first guy did, or a lot of views, which the other guy did. Like, you know, almost a million views on a video. So I felt obligated to kind of set the record straight, so to speak. That being said, there was this guy about 2 or 3 years ago, Sergeant Donovan, and which is why I have my Army shirt on, Army veteran, because he's a Marine, ex-Marine, what I refer to as a jarhead. So I ain't throwing shade on him because he picked a different branch of service. I'm just saying, we're kind of at odds already. And then he's at odds with me because he didn't use my name specifically, but he was calling me out. So I posted my own comment on that video some time ago. And then all of a sudden, his video, that same video that I commented on, popped up again on my feed. And I'm like, oh, perfect. Now I can push back to a larger audience because my little comment there kind of got buried in all the other comments and all that stuff. And so I felt it was kind of important because he does have, he has, how would I put it kindly? Situational awareness. So what that means is there's a lot of book soldiers out there, and the reason that I use the term book soldiers, I'm trying to hyphenate this as much as possible so I don't go blabbering all the time. What I call a book soldier is somebody who relies on the book for all the information, TCNA and all these other outfits who think that they have the last word on a subject because they printed a book. But if I had my own book, you see, then I could say, hey, be a book soldier and do it my way. So he is aware, he has situational awareness in that he doesn't do tile on a day-to-day basis. But because by his own confession, he has been in this business now, this business meaning construction business, 20 years, it doesn't mean this is his lane. He might have a better lane. He might be a good electrician or a good plumber or good this or that. I don't know what he does. But he puts out a video talking about things which he doesn't really have the knowledge of to talk about, or he doesn't have the insight, or he doesn't have the clarity enough. And that I try to set him straight on that because some people are kind of tone deaf. Like I'll tell somebody something and they'll like push back on it just because a book says it. And that's what he did. So without further ado, I'm going to bring him on and I'm going to stop the video at certain points so that I can kind of chime in on it because that's what my job is on these types of videos. So here we go.
In this video, I'll explain why so many shower pans fail and why so many pros do it wrong. Now you've probably seen my video, how to make a shower pan, and you've also probably watched other videos that might give you some conflicting information. So this video is intended to help clear up any of the confusion from all of the information and some of the false information out there. And I'll do this by sticking to the facts like building codes and product instructions. I also spoke with one of the largest manufacturers of shower pan liners in preparation for this video.
Okay. So he's going to stick to the facts and stick to the codes and stick to all the stuff that he wants to wrap his brain around and just be a book soldier. That's what I'm talking about, being a book soldier, and this is why he shows this schematic. The problem that I have with this schematic is a lot of different things. First of all, Odie has, and I think he showed this on the video in question that he refers to later on, the video that he had made prior to this that I commented on. First of all, if you see that, where Odie puts this picture out, and I think they kind of waterproof board. So if you look to the second one on the left, it says waterproof board. They never had that on there. They put backer board. And that was a pushback I had with Odie. When they actually published this picture, it said backer board. It didn't say waterproof backer board. And if you follow that arrow all the way down, you see where it's embedded into the mortar? Yeah, that's a problem. That's a big problem, because right below the mortar is a pan liner. So you're encapsulating your backer board into your wet mortar. And that's the pushback that I had, I think, on his video. Another issue is, and he's going to talk about that, and I think show this schematic later on, so I'll talk about that too. Another issue I have is, see off to the far right where that mortar, so Odie is showing a curb that's monolithic. In other words, your mortar goes up and over your curb, you see? So when your mortar gets wet, because it will if you do water in, water out system, when your mortar gets wet, capillary action will force that water up and over and onto your subfloor on the other side. On a wood floor, that's a recipe for disaster. It's not something I think, it's something I know, because it's something that I run into all the time. He also talks about, and I'm going to chime in on this too, that most failures don't happen outside the shower. It happens within, which is BS. Most failures always happen outside, and this is one of the reasons why. Right there on that picture, where you have either backer board, or in this case mortar or whatever, surrounding the curb, and you don't leave a gap, and he's going to talk about the gap later too. So without further ado, let me continue.
Comment below if you have any questions. Now, a shower pan liner basically has two jobs. The first is just to catch the water that comes out of the shower head and keep it in the shower so that it doesn't leak in the house. And this is the job of the shower pan liner. For the most part, people tend to get this right. The second is to take that water and direct it towards the drain so that it can get out. And this is where people tend to make mistakes. The number one cause for shower pan failure is not water leaking out of the shower, but actually being trapped in.
Nope, that's not true. The water that gets trapped in because water doesn't go out your weep holes, or your weep holes are clogged, and therefore your pan gets saturated with water. The water can't escape, and it has this musty smell about it. Yes, is a real thing. That is a real thing. I've seen it many, many times. I've smelt it many, many times. And as he talks about, it'll take years and years and years for that to fail. And I have gone on failures like that. But we're talking 20, 25, 30 years. The typical shower that I go on when that happens is 30 years later. 20 to 30 years, like I said. But the biggest failure is outside of the pan, the way I explained before, how that wicking action happens and you get water going out onto your subfloor outside, and or the left and right curb corners. And that's the number one failure. And that happens within a year or two or 3 or 4. But it happens a lot quicker than what he's talking about with, shower pan not being draining.
And when this happens, you have a snowball effect of damage that can go on for years before it's even detected.
Right.
It's important to understand that the shower pans that use mortar and liners, they're engineered to work a very specific way, and a very unique way. And the same goes for other methods like the bonded sheet membranes or hot mopping or copper or lead pans. Each of these methods, has pros and cons.
Okay. But we're going to talk about this because he talks about a lead pan, and he talks about, a shower pan liner and all this stuff, and each one of these methods. But the Schluter method up to the top right corner is an encapsulated, what we call now, sealed system. So the pre-slope's not even needed. Why he put that picture in there, I have no idea, because that's an aberration. That's not the other 3 pictures, the way we used to do things. The one on the top right corner is the way we're doing it now. So therefore, pre-slope is irrelevant, but he's still going to go on about it.
It's common for contractors to be partial to the method they use, or probably overly critical of the other ones. But the reality is that they all work, and they also can all fail if they're done wrong. But the key is they work differently. When you start blending these methods, that's when you're going to risk getting problems. Here's an example.
That's not true. When you start blending the methods, it's because you have critical thinking. When you start blending the methods, it's because when I do a Curdy pan liner, when I do use Curdy as a pan liner, I make sure that I overlap those gaps with Red Guard, Aqua Defense, or Hydroban or something, because I don't believe, well, I know mortar is not waterproof. So I need to be safe in the knowledge that I've done the job right, and I mix my products. So he's wrong on that too.
Membrane systems like Curdy, they apply a waterproofing sheet on top of the pan. So I see a lot of people that are installing mortar and liner pans, and they're adding this paintable waterproofing like Red Guard to the pan itself.
Yep.
And while it may seem like a good idea, to keep the water out of the pan, you have to remember that they function the way they do by design.
No. They function the way they do by design of the installer, you see. Again, Curdy doesn't say, oh yeah, use our membrane on your walls and all that stuff, and then just leave it and, like wrap it around the drain and just leave it. They don't tell you to waterproof around those areas, but I do it anyway. So when he's talking about, oh, well, and all these possibilities, all these theoretical possibilities that this might happen and that might happen if you don't do it right. Yeah, just like he said in the beginning, you can screw up any system.
And if you modify that design, you can cause problems. In this case, if you coat all or most of the pan, you might see possible tile adhesion problems, moisture.
Nope. No. Never, ever have I had tile adhesion problems on Red Guard, period.
You're being trapped between the grout and the thin set for too long.
No, water being trapped between the grout and the thin set too long would be any system that we're doing with a sealed system. If you use Curdy, it wouldn't matter. So he's saying it's okay to use Curdy because he posted a picture of Curdy, and it's the monolithic covering that goes on your pan surface. And then you put your mortar and your thin set down and all this stuff. Sorry, you put your thin set and your tile and all that stuff. And he's saying water can't escape with Red Guard, but it will with Curdy. You can't talk out both sides of your mouth. It doesn't work. Let me back that up again because it's important. Words are important.
All or most of the pan, you might see possible tile adhesion problems, moisture being trapped between the grout and the thin set for too long, and that can cause material failure.
Nope. Never, ever happen. Water being trapped between the thin set and the grout too long can cause a failure. It's never, ever happened. It doesn't happen on my Red Guard pans or Hydroban or Aqua Defense or whatever product that I use, and it doesn't happen on Curdy either. So, I don't know why he says stuff like this.
Or you might even get water in the pan where your waterproofing failed or wasn't applied right.
True. If it wasn't applied right, but that goes for any waterproofing method. And if you're doing a flood test after you've already Red Guarded your entire pan and all that stuff, and overnight that you have no leaks, same as you would do with a cloth membrane, then what he's saying is like, oh, you might and you could, and the sky is falling and blah, blah, blah.
And now it's going to stay a lot longer than it should because the evaporation that's part of the process has been compromised by you cutting off the airflow with your waterproofing. Now, the majority of the water...
But cutting off the airflow by the waterproofing is exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to encapsulate that pan material. All the mortar, all the walls, everything, just like he showed on that picture, gets a layer of Red Guard, Aqua Defense, Hydroban, 8+9, whatever it is. Even if you decide to use cloth membrane, the whole idea is an encapsulated membrane. The whole idea is not to have water get in there. That's the whole purpose. So let me back up because, again, words are important. Let me back up what he says because it's just so contradictory.
A lot longer than it should because the evaporation that's part of the process has been compromised by you cutting off the airflow with your waterproofing.
Right.
Now, the majority of the water is going to find its way into the top of the drain and go where it should. And then a small amount's going to get soaked in. Now, this small amount of water is now dependent on two things if there's any chance it's going to get out before it causes damage. Now, if you have a pre-slope under your liner, it's going to find its way to the weep holes where hopefully someone used gravel when they did the mortar pan and they're not clogged.
Okay. And I hate talking about pre-slopes because I've been doing it about 12 years now. If you put gravel around your drain to theoretically make sure that the weep holes don't get clogged, What you're doing is you're adding in a dense product, a rock, a stone, a pebble. You're adding in a dense product where otherwise it wouldn't be. Because the mortar, okay, so you're going to tell me that mortar can get into the sides there. Sorry, that water can get into the sides of the mortar and all throughout the pan through the grout line, and water can seep in there and then somehow go down the weep holes. But that same mortar won't get through your weep holes. I mean, that same water won't get through your weep holes with that same mortar that you're using everywhere else. But once it gets to the weep holes, they're too tiny. No, most OD drains, period, have troughs. They have 6 to 8 troughs on the top and the bottom of that locking ring. And you have the big giant bolts, 4 of them. Those holes are much bigger than your weep holes. And so water has a lot of way of egress, and including the drain barrel itself, because there's cutouts where the drain barrel threads are at. So there's all kinds of ways for water to egress, unless you mess up and put pebbles or stones or whatever, that very dense material that water would have trouble getting through, because you can't see that. You're mixing in all your mortar with all that rock. Now you have concrete instead of mortar. I'm just saying.
They are that water is trapped. It's a small
Nope.
amount, but it's not going anywhere. And if you shower every day, it adds up. You may have seen videos where installers attempt to disprove the need or the effectiveness of a pre-slope or the function of weep holes. Well, they're wrong, and I'll talk about that more in a little bit. I've been working in residential construction for about 20 years, and it almost seems like more people do it wrong than they do it right. But I can see how this happens. In construction, almost everything you learn is from someone else.
Exactly, from someone else. But he's saying that someone else should be a book soldier, not somebody like me, basically. He's going to get to me in a minute.
That's been doing it longer. Installing a pre-slope, it's not like it's hard, but it does add an entire day to the shower building process just due to the drying time. And skipping that step may be just a little too easy because most building inspectors don't even check for it. Now, I've seen some videos by some, relatively popular DIY YouTubers doing these garage experiments, trying to disprove the need for following the directions.
Now I've seen some relatively popular YouTubers out there, DIYers, that like dispute the whole need for a pre-slope and all that stuff because they don't want to follow directions. Yes, that's me, because I have critical thinking, and because I do things not by the book but what I've seen, and I mitigate what I've seen by rectifying those mistakes that other people have made and make it better than I found it. Period.
Now, the theory behind this no pre-slope movement is that pre-slopes aren't necessary because mortar's porous. And there's this thing called capillary action that makes the pre-slope useless because the water can't flow towards the drain because capillary action is not affected by gravity. Well, this is wrong. Capillary action is affected by gravity, and at a certain level of saturation, gravity becomes stronger. And this happens well before the total saturation that you see when pans fail.
Okay, that's not true. That's actually wrong in so many ways. So let me explain what he's talking about, because I think he's speaking to me when he says garage experiments, because I do have a garage experiment on my channel where I actually showed that a flat shower pan still evacuates 99% of the water. And I hate talking about pre-slopes because we don't do them anymore. It's kind of like a phone booth. It just doesn't exist. There's no reason for it. But what he said is felonious for 2 reasons. One, I never said that gravity doesn't work. I said gravity doesn't work on an encapsulated area, you see. The plumbing code, that 1/4 inch per foot for drain, has to do with sewage lines, where you have gravity and air and all that stuff work to push that water down that 1/4 inch per foot. In the absence of the air and the gravity, when you have an encapsulated area, encapsulated matters, because now all you have is wicking action. You don't have all this air and all this gravity force fed and all that stuff. Let me explain something to you, because I got to break this down in the easiest form I can. You have a table, and say this table is longer than this table is, and because this is a pan. And you take a roll of paper towels and you put it right in the middle, right? See how I can situate this and hold it at the same time. Okay, so the water is going down this area. What happens if I pour this water, which I'm not going to? You can't see it because my cup is invisible because it's green. But I have a cup in my hand of water. And if I pour water on this high area, what's going to happen? All this water will go into this paper towel roll. When this paper towel roll isn't dry anymore, when it saturates as much water as it possibly can, the excess water will go down this area. And we're talking outside area, right? Say I stuck this in your sewage pipe. If I stuck this in your sewage pipe, then water would saturate this paper towel roll. When there's no more dry area for water wicking action to saturate this paper towel roll, it's 100%. The excess water will still continue down that drain. But as long as there's water fed on this paper towel roll will be wet forever. The biggest issue becomes, why is he talking about pre-slopes? This is 2 years ago he made this video. We're not doing pre-slopes anymore. If you're doing a water in, water out system, we're not doing pre-slopes. But my garage experiment 4 years ago, 5 years ago, already proved that. I'm just saying. Anyway, let me bring him back because I'll get caught up in my own diatribe.
Capillary action is actually a part of what makes the mortar pans work. It keeps the water from pooling up, spreading it out so it evaporates easier.
Bullcrap. So spreading the water out so it evaporates easier? In the old days, perhaps, maybe. But again, there's thin set on top of your pan mortar, right? Your pan mortar is wet. Then you have thin set spread out in pretty good size. And then you have your tile, and then you have your grout. So the idea that somehow or another between showers, water would be able to escape out of that mortar pan to the extent that it matters is kind of BS.
Because it has more contact with air.
Whatever.
It's almost always safer to trust the instructions in the...
No, it's not. It is definitely not. Because guess what? Odie, Schluter, all these manufacturers, it doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter all the products that I buy. Custom building products will never come to my rescue because they're always going to find a way out. There's always going to be operator malfunction. Their lawyers will make sure of it. So yes, it's not better to follow their instructions. It's better to follow common sense and rationale.
Scientific testing behind them. The testing and development of a product by a billion-dollar company cannot be disproven by...
Yes, it can. Yes, it can. I'm going to back up to that. A billion-dollar company. Let me show you something, because when he said that, I actually looked it up, and let's see if I can find it now. It's not a billion-dollar company. Hold on a minute. Let me bring my phone up so you can see it here. Well, not that you don't believe me, but I'm just saying, like, let me just bring this up. So I Googled what is Odie. Well, you can't see it anyway. What is Odie worth? According to available information, Odie Plumbing is currently valued at $448 million. So it's not a billion. They're still halfway there, but they're not there yet. They're not a billion-dollar company. So now that lie, you see, Sergeant Donovan, when you go on to a video talking about stuff that you have really not a lot of knowledge of, that you haven't been doing this for 30 years like I have, well, 25 years that I have, literally staying in my lane. I don't do roofing. I know about a lot of stuff, but my lane is not roofing or plumbing or electrical or all this other stuff. My lane is tile and building showers for a long, long time. So it's disingenuous for you to go on a video and talk smack about me and my methods and how I got to go by the book like you want to do, but then also just spout out lies, like literally spout it. The same way that I could have found out what they're worth, he could have done the same thing. That's all I'm saying. If you're going to say something, back it up. The thing about my channel is every time I talk about something, I always back it up with evidence. Always. 100%. When I talk about that wicking action, how it works over the curb and it ruins your outside floor and it ruins the wood behind it, I have videos and I literally put them on my channel because I don't want somebody to just believe me. I want them to see the evidence. So let's go over this again.
The testing and development of a product by a billion-dollar company cannot be disproven by one garage experiment. When you buy an Odie brand line of what makes the mortar pans work, it keeps the water from pooling up, spreading it out so it evaporates easier, because it has more contact with air. It's almost always safer to trust the instructions and the scientific testing behind them. The testing and development of a product by a billion-dollar company cannot be disproven by one garage experiment.
Yes, it can be disproven by one garage experiment, and I've already disproven it by my garage experiment. See, what I told you earlier is that he's going to show this schematic again of this shower pan and the way things are done by OD standard, by OD standard. And clearly they've already said waterproof board, but if you look on their original video, it says backer board. It doesn't say waterproof board. So they've already changed according to whatever standards they decided, whichever videos they watched. Maybe they'll watch mine and said, hey, you know what? We can still embed this board if we call it something different, which they did. It's a waterproof board now. And I don't even see, yeah, I see pebbles around the weep hole area, and then I dispute that too. I don't know why they're still doing that. But again, my biggest issue here is that we all know as tile guys that the left and the right curve fail almost 85 to 90% of the time, a shower. And that water wicks up the studs that are joining to that curb. That's where we have a failure, plus outside of the floor. And so they're clearly showing the wrong way to build a curb. This is my issue.
When you buy an OD brand liner, this is what it comes with. It's clearly showing you the pre-slope and the gravel. And then there's this, one of the more controversial parts of the install.
Yes.
The backer board is in the pan and not over it. You may or may not have heard about this, but it seems that the reaction and the agreed upon fix to all of these shower pan failures is to get the backer board out of the mortar and to leave a gap.
Right, which I started doing about 12. I have to go back and look on my channel, but I started raising my board maybe about 11 or 12 years ago. Nobody raised their backer board 11 or 12 years ago. It was something that I came up with. And if I had a book to put out there like NTCNA and all these other organizations, then I would have put that in my book. Raise your backer board. Don't have that contact going on. I came up with that because it gained traction. I don't know anybody that did it back then. And people are calling me hack for all different reasons. I was doing a sealed system way before Flow Effects or any of these products came out. Way before. I started sealing my entire walls and my shower pan mortar, probably around that same time, probably about at least 10 or 11 years ago. 10 or 11 years ago, I was waterproofing the entirety, and people were going on. You can go back to those videos 10 years ago. People are like, are you crazy? You're a hack. I can't believe you're waterproofing the mortar bed. You're not supposed to do that. That mortar bed is supposed to breathe. Blah, 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 blah. They were getting on to me. And then guess what? Almost a dozen years later, Flow Effects comes around. Waterproof your entire pan surface. Get out of here.
You know, while it's true that once your shower pan fails and becomes saturated, moisture will wick up backer board because it has nowhere else to go, resulting in moisture damage to not only the backer board, but to the wood framing as well.
Exactly. Once it gets into your backer board, it's going to wick up and go onto your 2x4s, all of your 2x4s, and outside and everywhere else it can go. Water is unstoppable.
So when contractors are demoing failed showers and finding this, the solution that seems to be gaining the most traction is to not put the backer board in the pan at all. And
Right.
It is true. If you keep the backer board out of the mortar and the shower pan fails, you will most likely keep all of the nastiness in the pan so that you only have to tear out the pan and replace it.
Okay. What he's showing there, that picture, first of all, OSB, I can't stand. OSB is not a good subfloor, but they're building houses that have OSB all the time. But what he's showing there is not necessarily because there was wicking action on. I don't know why he's showing this picture. Arguably, you shouldn't have any water going anywhere else, which is why this whole video is kind of a mood issue anyway. If you're doing a water in, water out system now, you're still using a telephone booth.
You know, it's hard to be against that. I just wish the focus would be on correcting the cause of the failure and not just a partial reduction of damage.
Right. The cause of the failure, right there, right on the right and the left of the curb. And the fact that water wicks its way up and over the curb and gets everywhere else, gets onto those vertical studs that you see there, and it ruins. And so getting back to what I said before, not to be repetitive, which I am a lot, The vast majority of showers fail because of wicking action, action up into the curb and up into the 2x4s and everywhere else, because you didn't mitigate those mistakes that I find all the time. It doesn't happen because your pan is saturated. That's very rare. It does happen, but like he said, which is contradictory to what I say, it doesn't happen for the most part. When he started the video, we're going to go back to it at the end of this. We're going to go back to it and say, let him speak for himself.
And that is working because it was installed correctly will never become wet enough to saturate backer board. It was designed to function this way. But I don't blame anyone for being nervous about, putting the backer board in the mortar. And I don't think there's anything wrong with leaving a small gap. The only negative that I can think is it's going to be more difficult.
It's not difficult at all. Why is it difficult to leave a gap?
Now, if you choose to leave a gap, just make sure that you have the liner, supported so you can properly pack the mortar at the edges. And if you're using a metal trowel, just be really careful not to puncture the liner when you're working the mortar.
First of all, if you're using a metal trowel, look here. For those of you who are not knowledgeable about shower pan liner, that shower pan liner is a mil thickness that if you try to cut, when I try and cut one with a razor knife, it's difficult to puncture through. So the fact that he's talking about, oh, if you use a metal trowel, be careful not to puncture the liner. What are you talking about? Like, that's just never happened. 22, 24 years of me doing this work, that's just never happened. But okay.
Other than installing it correctly, there's one more thing that you need to do to ensure that your shower pan lasts. It needs regular maintenance. The shower pan is designed to handle small amounts of moisture getting in, so cracked or unsealed grout can allow too much and give it the opportunity for mold and mildew growth.
Okay. Not that this is important because it's not the focus of my video, but that's garbage too. So what you're telling me is if you have a crack, right, that horizontal crack that he's showing where the wall tile meets the floor tile, that too much water can get into there and fail your pan, but not the same water that's getting through your grout line everywhere else, because he's showing like a 6x6 tile on a floor. But we're not doing 6x6. We're doing a 2x2 mosaic. We're doing whatever we're doing. The last one I did was penny tile. There's a lot of grout. Do you think that the perimeter of that little skinny grout line is going to add that much more water?
All inside corners need grout caulk, not grout.
Wrong.
This is another thing that I see people skip a lot. Regular grout will crack in these areas, allowing moisture in.
That's not true either. Regular grout will not crack in the... Let me tell you something. I've had 3 houses in the last 30 years. One of the houses I was in, almost 14. This is about 13-ish years. Of all 3 of those houses where I built my own shower, I've never, ever had that cracking that he's showing on the vertical or horizontal. I've just never had it. So what he says, like, I don't know. We're going to have to go back to what he said again because I interrupt him a lot. Sorry about that. What he says is just not true. I don't advocate for caulking, for using caulk around those areas, because most homeowners cannot do it correctly. Most homeowners will mess it up. And even if they get it good, especially with silicone, you're going to have a tough time getting it out because you're going to have to get it out. Part of the maintenance that he's talking about is taking out that caulking 2, 3, 5 years down the road when it has grungy, when it's got mold and mildew behind it. You got to cut it out. It's not easy to put in, but it's harder to take out, which is not why I don't advocate to use it. If you need it later on because you have such a badly built house that things are moving and separating to that extent, then you got bigger problems. But let me also address that. When you have the 2 corners coming together, let me bring up my full screen. When you have 2 corners coming together, right? 2 corners of a shower that come together, and there's the upside down view. When you have 2 corners of shower coming together, yes, all house move. All material in your house moves incrementally depending on the weather, depending on the structure and the foundation of your house and all that stuff. Having said that, if you waterproof all your walls, as I said before, if your entire shower is monolithically waterproofed, and it doesn't matter which waterproofer you use, RedGuard is also a crack preventer. So that stretching that RedGuard is able to do will make it not transfer through to where you're going to have that type of problem. I just don't run into it. Like I said, 3 houses that I've had, and I just haven't had that type of cracking that's showing on that picture. Just haven't had it.
The grout in a shower should be sealed at least once a year. If the grout looks wet as soon as water hits it, it probably needs sealer.
No, if the grout looks wet as soon as water hits it, that's normal. That's normal because grout absorbs water. So then he's saying use a sealer. No, if you use a sealer, it's still going to get wet. It's still going to look wet when the water hits it. A sealer is not a waterproofer. A sealer keeps out hair dye and soap product and all this other stuff. It just keeps out all that foreign material that will cause your grout to discolor. That's what a sealer does. A sealer is not a waterproofer. Let him talk.
You can use an impregnator sealer for most tiles and grout. Just follow the instructions and apply more than one coat.
Let him talk again.
The grout in a shower should be sealed at least once a year. If the grout looks wet as soon as water hits it, it probably needs sealer. You can use an impregnator sealer for most tiles and grout. Just follow the instructions and apply more than one coat.
Okay, I disagree. Again, for the reasons that I already mentioned, I disagree. I don't like what he says here at the end. I really, really don't. When water hits the grout, it discolors right away is always going to be the case.
Once a year.
And once a year. Have I sealed my shower once a year? No. In my last house, I had tumbled marble. I had 4x4 tumbled marble. And when I saw the water bead, because I used a really, really good sealer that actually did repel water, and that stuff is like $80 for a little tiny jug. When I saw the water stop beading, then I knew it was time to seal again. But I think in that 12, 13 years I was there, I only sealed it twice. The very first time was probably 2 or 3 times that I sealed it. And then I think midstream, maybe 6, 7 years later, I sealed it again. So for him to say it needs to be sealed every year, I'm not going to argue with that because it's better to seal it than not seal it, especially if you have, like hair dye and all this other stuff going on. Hair dye, I don't know, wine. Yeah, burgundy wine. Some women like to drink wine in their shower and all that stuff. Then sealing is good. And if you want to do it once a year, then fine. But the biggest issue that he didn't even talk about is not using bleach products, because bleach products will get rid of your sealer before that year ever expires. If you start scrubbing your shower with bleach products, shower meaning all your tile and all your grout and all that stuff, is that bleach product by, I don't know, 2 months along, because if you're cleaning your shower once a week or once a month or whatever, you're going to eliminate most of that sealer you put on there anyway. So don't use bleach products. I'm just going to go ahead and leave this video alone for now, because I'll go on way too long. And I've probably gone on way too long already. 30 minutes is a long time to talk about shower pre-slope, when we don't do pre-slopes anymore. If you're doing pre-slope still, it means you're still doing water in and water out system, and you're doing a disservice to your customer or yourself if you're building for yourself, because we don't want, the only purpose that we do a shower pan mortar bed for now is for the surface tile, so that when water hits that, it will go down into the drain. That's the only reason we do a mortar pan. Otherwise, we could use Tile Ready, or we could use any other product that is a foam product that's tileable, because it does the same thing. It creates that slope that we need going down to the drain. So the fact that I'm even doing this video now, that I'm talking smack about Donovan, is that it just fell on my feed, and I just felt like this is going to get more viewership than what his original video got, hopefully. So it will dispel some of those things that he talks about, because at least half a dozen things he said was out and out lie. Like even that Odie is $1 billion company. They're nowhere near $1 billion company. If you had 50 cents in your hand, you're only halfway to $1. However, you had to, the time that it took you to work for that is the next time that you have to get to that point. I'm just saying, it's disingenuous to say some of these things when obviously he doesn't know better. So I just want to do a little pushback. But anyway, I'm done with it. But that's my video. Oh, by the way, so my video on this 10 series tub to shower conversion, part 5 is coming up tomorrow, Friday. Part 5 is coming up tomorrow, and that's how to put it in a pan liner. And if you watch part 6, it's going to talk about what he just talked about that gap with my wall board, right? No, part 6 will be the mortar pour, and then part 7 will be the wall board. Either which way, that video that I have with that tub to shower conversion where I put the pan liner in, and I think the whole video is about 20 minutes long, but it's how to put a pan liner in, how to mitigate those folds on the corner, because people talk about those folds in the corner with a pan liner, how you fold it. Now you have, and now when I put my wall board there to push back that pan liner, but I show why that's not a big deal on that video that pops up tomorrow at 5 p.m. But I appreciate each and every one of my Patreon members. For those that want to contribute to my Patreon, you can find that link in my description of my channel. And that the way that works is you give me $1 every month off of your credit card, or $2 if you want, or $5. And then after about a year or so, when you've contributed for all the free information you're getting from me, when you contributed $40, $50, because it makes it easier to contribute $2 a month than it does just throw me $20 or $30 for all the free information that I give, because I get nothing from YouTube whatsoever. And I don't have no merch or anything. I should get merch, huh? If anybody knows how to do merch, let me know. Put it in the comment section or reach out to me. But anyway, have a wonderful weekend. I know I won't see you again. But anyway, have a great weekend, guys. And watch for that video popping up tomorrow, Friday at 5 o'clock.